Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join the class today. There is a ton of stuff that the content management system allows you to do. Even in today's class, I doubt we'll have time to get into all of it. So please, if there are specific things that you've been trying to do or are interested in, please make sure you raise those questions. And as we go along, I'll be monitoring the chat and posting, related links or things of that nature that will help you to continue to grow your editor skills. So thanks, Fareed. Back to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Jess. Again, today's class is going to be covering basic page editing. And so with that said, before we start with our actual demo, just want to quickly review our agenda as well as our upcoming training courses. So on the 13th of September, we'll be focusing on images in the CMS, followed by an additional class related to events in the CMS towards the end of the month. And then in October, we'll be covering custom content as well as forms in the CMS. For those of you who are a little bit more advanced and would like to get some more information about how to deal and how to access forms, we'll be hosting an advanced forms session on November 8th. Okay, let's move along into today's agenda. So today, we're going to be discussing the fundamentals of a basic page. And so what that entails is just discussing what is required and what is optional when it comes to actually creating a basic page. Next, we'll discuss text formatting and styling. And so that'll be a discussion on how to manage the main content and how to use different page formatting options that are available to you within the WYSIWYG editor. Next, we'll talk about how to manage media, which covers how to add different types of media to a basic page and the image styles associated with them. And then we'll also discuss how to manage your layout. And so how to add a sidebar with content to your basic page. And then very lastly, we'll discuss menu settings if we have time, which just covers adding or removing your basic page from your web area's main menu. At any time, feel free to raise your hands and ask questions, or feel free to drop them in the chat. I or Jessica will get to them as soon as possible. Okay, with that said, we will jump straight into the demo or the staging environment. And so if you guys want to navigate and follow along to that link, this would be the time to do it. Okay, hopefully you guys are able to see my screen. I am currently in the staging environment. And so with that said, let's take a look at our first exercise for today's training session. But before we do that, I just kind of want to quickly talk about what a basic page is. So what is a basic page? A basic page is a page that provides detailed information about the subject matter at hand. They're usually subpages of a landing page. And the basic page is used to store static content such as an About Us page. And so what we're currently seeing on the screen right now is a landing page. But if I were to, for example, navigate to this particular page here, from that landing page, we can see here that this is actually just using a very basic page where we have the title at the top, we have the content or the body of the page in the middle, and then looks like we also have some additional data tables on this particular page here, but that is optional. So I just want to give you guys a quick glimpse as to what a basic page is. And now that we're familiar with what basic pages are, let's actually go ahead and take a look at how we can create one and how we can edit the different options that are on a basic page. And so with that said, let's go ahead and log in. This has been done before. And so I'm not really going to spend too much time here. To log in, you're going to click on the login link at the top right-hand corner of the screen. From there, you're going to actually select the Enterprise/PIV login option. And then from here, you can go ahead and log in with a user ID and password. I'm going to be logging into a special account today. And so I'm going to be logging in from this screen. But everything should appear the same once we've logged in. And so once I've logged in, I can navigate to my user profile using one of two methods. I can click on the View Profile link at the top left-hand corner of the page here, or I can click on My Account, which is to the left of the Log Out button. Okay, so I'm now on my profile page. From my profile page, in order to create a basic page, we're going to select the web area that we want to create that basic page in. Again, just a quick reminder, if you're just logging in for the very first time today and you'd like to follow along, you may not see a web area, and that's because you've never logged into the Intranet CMS before. So if that is the case for you, this would be the time to raise your hand or to maybe just drop your user ID in the chat. That way Jessica can get you signed up or associated with a web area. For today's training session, I'm going to be using the CMS training web area, but for those of you following along, you should, I believe, have access to the testing web area. Okay, once we've selected our web area that we want to create the basic page in, the next thing we want to do is navigate to the content page. And so in order to do that, we'll click on the content button. Again, just a quick refresher, from the content page, we have the ability to see all of the content that's been created for our specific web area. And that's just going to be listed here in single row items. At any time, if we're looking to access our previously created content, we can filter this page by title, content type, or moderation state. For now, since we're creating a new basic page, we're going to go ahead and select the Add New Content button. Okay, from the Add New Content page, we're going to go ahead and select the basic page content type. Great. Now that we have our basic page, let's quickly just discuss some of the fields that are available here. And then once we've discussed the fields, we'll actually go ahead and start filling this out. So starting from the top down, at the very top, we have the title field. The title is displayed at the top of the basic page, and it's also going to be used to generate the link to the basic page. And so we always recommend that you use a unique value when you're choosing the title, and that you choose something that is not redundant. Next, we have the featured image. The featured image is going to be a responsive image displayed immediately below the page title, but above the content of the page. Featured images are going to be displayed using 960 pixels width and 350 pixels high. Again, the featured image is optional, so it's not required, but you can add one if you would like to. Next, we have the summary field, which is going to be used to customize the text displayed when the content is a part of a list, or it's also going to be used when we're searching through content throughout the intranet. And so we always want to make sure that the summary is descriptive and that it just kind of summarizes what is actually going to be on the page. Next is the body field. This particular field is going to store the main content of the page. It's also going to be styled using the what you see is what you get editor, or the WYSIWYG editor is what we call it for short. And we'll dive in and take a closer look at that here in just a moment. Below the body field, we have the custom content dropdown. And this dropdown is going to be used to add custom content to our page. And this supports custom content such as slideshows, cards, and dynamic lists. And some of these types of content we did discuss during our last training session on landing pages. And then very lastly, at the bottom of the page here, we have the layout option or the layout dropdown. And this particular field allows us to select to either add or remove a sidebar to our basic page. Now within the sidebar, we can add things such as text boxes or lists of links. Okay, now that we know exactly what fields are going to be stored on a basic page, let's go ahead and actually start filling this basic page out, and then we'll take a closer look at the body field. So for now, I'm just going to call this my basic training page. And I'm going to go ahead and just add a featured image just to show you guys what that looks like. Okay. Once I've selected to upload an image, you'll notice here that I can provide some alternative text here for my image, as well as the name of the actual featured image that I'm going to be uploading. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I can also add keywords associated with my media image. And then if at any point I'd like to add a caption, I can do that. Once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and click on the place button to add my featured image. And it looks like I'm actually running into an issue here. So I do apologize. If you guys can give me just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and try this again. Okay, looks like there might just be a bug in the staging environment, so I do apologize for that. Looks like I may not be able to show this particular feature off, but we may be able to take a look at an existing basic page where the featured image is actually being displayed. And so now that we've provided our title, we're actually going to jump down to the summary. Again, please keep in mind that what you type in the summary here will be used in the search results when people are using or when people are searching throughout the internet. Next, we have the body field, and this is where we're going to be spending the majority of our call today. And so within the body field, we have the what you see is what you get text editor. Now, there are two text formats that are going to be available. And you can change the type of text format you're using by using the drop down here below the field. By default, we're going to be using the simple text format. However, you can also use the rich text format. And so before we actually switch and cover the rich text format, I just want to quickly talk about some of the available options in the simple text format. So starting from the left and moving to the right, we have the undo and redo buttons. And so these buttons here will allow for you to undo the last change you made or redo the last change you made within the actual body field. Most of you should be familiar with that, especially in Word. Next, we have the bold and italics icon. Again, pretty standard formatting, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Next, we have the paragraph format dropdown. In this particular dropdown, we'll get some heading options, as well as some additional options that we'll talk about in just a little bit. And so with that said, let's just quickly add a header to our page. I can go ahead and just type in the header that I want. And I'm going to go ahead and select the actual text here and click on the paragraph format dropdown again. And this time I'm going to go ahead and select the heading number 2. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice here that my text has been updated to include the styling that I've selected. And so one thing to note here when you are dealing with headings is that headings should be used sequentially to comply with Section 508 requirements. And so what I mean by that is that if I'm starting out with a heading 2 section here, if I were to have a subheader below this content, that would then need to use heading number 3. And if that had a sub heading below it, that would then need to use heading number 4. And so again, we don't recommend jumping around. You normally want to just use them sequentially. So there's something that I wanted to note there. Now that we've got our heading, let's quickly talk about some of the formatting styles that are available. So formatting styles can be accessed by using the styles drop down here. You'll notice here that we have different block styles available. We have the intro text style, and then we also have the heading highlighting style. So let's go ahead and just quickly apply the H2 highlight styles here again. I'm going to just copy my simple text, and I can select that particular style, and you'll notice here that now I have a blue shading behind my my heading. Okay, let's go ahead and add some more information down here, and let's check out the intro text style. This is going to just say something very simple. Again, I'm going to go ahead and just copy my text, and this time I'll apply the intro text style just so you guys can kind of compare the two. Okay, next we have the link options. And again, this I believe is a pretty standard styling tool. And so let's just go ahead and add a link. And because I did not change it from the intro text, the new line still carries or still continues to apply the same formatting style, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and just copy the link text, and I can click on the button here, or I can use the Control K shortcut. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the actual link button. And you'll notice here that I'm not presented with a pop-up. I'm going to go ahead and just type in the name of the page that I'd like to link to. And as I do that, you'll notice here that I'm presented with the drop-down. So this particular field, the URL field for links, is an autocomplete field. And so as I'm typing in a URL, it will present me with all of the content that's currently inside of the CMS with this particular keyword. Now, please keep in mind that you do not have to use internal links only. You can use external links. And if you wanted to use an external link, you can just go ahead and just type it out as you normally would. And this field should allow for you to save that. For now, since I do want to reference an internal page that's within the Intranet CMS, I can just go ahead and select it. And I'll go ahead and click the Save button. And you'll notice now that my text has now been updated to become a link. One other thing that I'd like to quickly touch on when it comes to links are different types of links. And so this is link text, but let's say that maybe I wanted to use a button instead. I'm going to go ahead and just type in the same thing again. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make it a link. And this time, while my link text is highlighted, if I jump back into, I believe it is the styling options or the styling drop downs, you'll notice that I now have an object style. So for particular formatting options, we will be given additional styles, and the links is one of those formatting options that we have an additional style for. And so now that I've got that selected, I can either use the link text, or if I click on the button here, I can also use a link button. And so before I continue any further, I just want to quickly save this page, take a look at it, and then we'll jump back in here and then finish reviewing the remaining simple text formatting options. Okay, so we can now see my basic page here. Again, this is the title field, which is displayed at the top and used when creating the link to my basic page. And so you'll notice here that at the top here, we have a web form, or excuse me, a URL pattern, which is the web area that my basic page is being created in, / the actual title of my basic page. Next, we have the headers that we applied, and then the intro text, followed by our 2 different types of links.
Please.
Clicking on the link should redirect me to the appropriate page. And so at this time, I'll go back.
It tastes like you don't need it.
What happened?
Whenever you order fries, ask them to add the salt and peppers.
Okay, next, let's go ahead and continue. We're going to jump back into our edit mode. And now that we've touched on links, we're going to be touching a little bit now on adding media to our basic page. And so there's 2 ways that we can add media to our basic page. The first option we're going to be discussing is going to be the Insert Inline Media from Media Library option. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that button. And this particular option is going to be used when we're adding documents to our basic page. And so with that said, we have the ability to either upload a brand new text document, or we can also add an existing document from our media library. For now, we're going to go ahead and select to add a new document, and we'll quickly talk about some of the options that are available to you when you do that. Okay. So at this point, I have selected my document. One thing to note here is that this document is an Excel document. However, anytime we're uploading document and placing it as inline media, we actually do not need to include the extension or the document type in the name. The intranet will actually deduce that for us and append that to the title of the actual document. And so this is going to be the name or label that's actually going to be shown on the page. And then if we want to provide a description of the file, we can go ahead and do that. I don't believe that that's going to be displayed. And then any keywords that we'd like to associate with this document. Now that I've saved my document, you'll notice here that it's been automatically selected within the media library. I'm going to go ahead and just click on the Insert Selected button. And you'll now see that the name that I provided for the Excel file is now here, but the Intranet CMS has now added the actual document type for me at the end of the file. And so again, in order to just not be redundant, we ask that you remove any of the document types from the name and just use the CMS generated extension here. At this time, I'm going to quickly save this document or save this basic page so we can take a look at what this document looks like. And so we just have a very simple link here, and clicking on this here should allow me to download the file. And so that's one of the benefits of the inline media options. Okay, next, let's talk about the insert media from media library option. This option is going to be used when we're trying to add images, audio, or remote videos. So let me just make some space here. And we're going to see if we can add an image to our basic page. So we previously uploaded our bee on a flower image, so I'm actually going to go ahead and just reselect that particular image. And I'm going to click on the Insert Selected option. and I can now see my image. Now, there are a few things that we can edit when it comes to this here. And you can edit the image by clicking on the Edit Media option at the top left-hand corner of the image. And so clicking on that pulls up or introduces a new pop-up. From here, I can add any alternate text that I want, but I can also change the size and the alignment of the image itself. And so let's say I want to maybe right align the image. I can do that by clicking on this radio option here. And then maybe let's say that this image is too large. We want to maybe use a smaller size. We can do that. Let's just go ahead and use the small display size here. And then I can just save that by clicking the Save button. And so you notice here that the alignment and the size has updated immediately in the WYSIWYG editor. Next, let's talk quickly about how we can add staff or staff information to our basic page. And so in order to do that, we're going to use the Add Staff Member option in the WYSIWYG editor. So to the right of the Insert Media Library option, there's a staff option. Clicking on that gives me an additional pop-up here where I can search for a staff member by using their user ID or I believe their first and last name. So let's go ahead and just add, I'm going to go ahead and add myself here. Or we can use Tony, that's fine as well. Once I've selected a user to add, there's a few different display options that we can use to display a staff member. So one of the newer display types is the leadership display mode. There's also the POC or point of contact display. There's a point of contact simple, and then we also have a profile type. And so I'm not sure that we're going to be able to cover all of these today, but for now, let's go ahead and select the leadership option. Excuse me, let's select the point of contact option. And then we don't want to align, but just like we align the image of the bee on the flower, you have the option to select between left, center, or right align. And then you can also provide a quick caption about the staff member if you would like to. At this time, I can click on the Embed button to add my staff member to my page. And you'll notice here that we now have Tony's information embedded directly in the WYSIWYG editor of the page. So with that said, we've made a few updates. Let's go ahead and save our page and take a look and see what it looks like to an end user. And so scrolling down, we can now see our point of contact here left aligned, and we have our image right aligned. And I apologize for this here. This is for compliance reasons here that this is popping up. Exit out of there. There we go. And then we also have our staff member caption immediately below our staff member. Let's quickly update this staff member display to a different type of display, and we'll come back here and see how that looks. So I'll jump back into the WYSIWYG editor. And I believe if I click on the actual contact and I click on this button again, that should pull up our menu. And then from here, I can change into, for example, our profile view mode. And I'll click on the embed button again. And so as soon as I do that, you'll notice here that Tony's information, while it's still the same, is now represented in a different format. Let's go ahead and save this and see what it looks like. And so by clicking on Tony's name, I should be redirected to his user profile, again, where I can get some more information about him. So that's how we can add staff member information directly into our basic page. Let's keep moving along here. Next, we have the bullet and numbering options. I'm not going to dive into these. I feel like these are pretty self-explanatory. And then following along, we have the related info box. So we are going to talk a little bit about this here. So the related info box is going to be just that. It's going to be a simple text box or simple box on the page where you can add some related information without having to use the sidebar layout. And so this is going to be a good alternative for that. So let me make some room here. I'm actually going to delete some of this media. There we go. And now we're going to add our related information box. Again, we can choose the alignment or the placement of the box. By default, it will float right, but we can also keep it on the left-hand side. For now, just for demo purposes, I'll keep it to float right. And you'll notice here, as soon as I add the box, it's now presented here on the right-hand side of my screen. If I want to type in information here, oops. Not sure what's going on here. For some reason, I'm having, there we go. I can enter my text just like that. And if I were to save, I can now see my related info box here on the right-hand side of the page. Again, please keep in mind that the related info box is going to be a good substitute for the 2-column layout. And that's something that we're going to be talking about here in just a moment. But normally you do not want to use the related information box in addition to the 2-column layout, because the 2-column layout will actually make the page a little bit more narrow. And so visually, it does become a little cluttered and unattractive. So we recommend that you either use the related info box on the right-hand side of the screen, or the 2-page column layout, which we'll be discussing here in just a moment. Okay, I'm going to go back into edit mode again. And I believe the very last thing we're going to discuss here under the simple text formatting options is going to be the new icon. So let me actually see if I can get rid of this here. Having some issues selecting my content. There we go. I apologize about that. But now let's say that we want to maybe highlight some particular bit of information on our basic page and let users know that it's some sort of new addition to that page. And so we can do that by highlighting a particular piece of content directly inside of the body of the WYSIWYG field. And then we can use this new icon here. We can use that button to add the icon. So if I click on that, you'll notice here that on the left-hand side of the content that I selected, I now have this new icon. One thing to note about this new icon is that it will be displayed for 30 days. And so that's 30 days from the date that the icon is added. However, if you're interested in updating that, you can do that by using the source option here on the very right-hand side of the page. So if I click on that, you'll get some of the basic HTML elements that are being used to generate the basic page or the content of the basic page. But you'll notice here that specifically right along the bit of content that I highlighted, there is this data date option. And then within that, you'll notice here that the date has now been set to the end of, excuse me, the start date is now set to today. And so 30 days from this particular date is when the icon will disappear. So if I wanted to edit that, I could just do that by, like so, by entering the appropriate date that I wanted. Fairly straightforward. And so with that said, let me re-add the icon. And I'll save my page. Ooh, looks like it actually added it twice. But that's how it would look like to an end user. And so I believe at this time we've gone through all of the simple text formatting options. So let's take a look at the rich text formatting options. And then if time allows, we're going to take a look at the layout and the custom content options below the body. Okay. So in order to change from the simple text formatting option to the rich text formatting option, you can use this drop down here. As soon as I change from simple text to rich text, you'll notice here that I'm presented with the pop-up. And this is essentially just telling me that some of the options that are currently being used may not be supported in the text formatting option that I'm changing to. And so normally if we're, for example, creating our basic page, and by default or at the beginning, we're starting off with rich text, and we're maybe changing to simple text, well, because some of the rich text formatting options are not available in the simple text formatting drop-down or toolbar, we may lose some of that formatting. And so this is essentially what this text box is telling us. And so for now, I'm going to click on continue. And the main differences between the simple text format and the rich text format are going to be the quotes that are going to be now available, table formatting options, and we also have some font awesome icon formatting options. But everything else that's available as a part of the simple text formatting option is available in the rich text formatting option. And so again, we're not going to touch on everything here, but we now see the ability, or now have the ability, to use the strike through option. We also have the superscript and subscript options here. We also have the quote option, as well as the alignment option, so we can align left, center, or right. And then we also have some pasting options here. And so this particular button here will allow me to remove any format. But then this particular clipboard icon will allow for me to paste text that I've copied from another source as plain text, or if I've copied some text from maybe a Word document and I want to keep the formatting from that source document, I can use the paste from Word option to retain any formatting from that document. And so let's actually take a quick look at how we can use some of these additional features. And so the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the block quotes, or the quote options. And so here, I have now typed in some simple text here, which we're going to style as a quote. In order to do that, I need to select my content. And this time I'm going to use the block quote option or button. And I've now,
Kareem, this is Jessica. I want to interrupt real quick. I wanted to let you know you're still formatted as intro text since it's just been continuing on. So you might not, the formatting might not work as well if you don't clear that first.
good catch, thank you. There we go. And so as soon as I've converted this into a block quote, under the formatting style dropdown, we'll notice that we have a few additional options. So the first is the pull quote, which is currently being applied. Next, we have the left pull quote, which I just applied. Let me actually re-highlight this again. And then let's actually try the right pull quote. There we go. And so that just kind of changes the alignment of the actual quote. Next, let's go ahead and add a simple table, and then we'll also discuss data tables. So let me make a little bit of room here. And in order to add a table, we are going to use this grid icon here on the right-hand side of the toolbar. And as soon as I click that, I get an additional pop-up where I can define how many rows and columns are going to be present within my data table. And so for now, I'm going to keep this as the default. We're going to use 3 rows and 2 columns. And then under this headers dropdown, we can define whether or not this table includes a header row, or whether that header row is in the first row or the first column or both. For now, because I'm going to be using a data table, my headers are going to be contained only in the first row. So I'll select that option. And I can provide a caption here. So this will be my data table caption. And I'll click OK. Now, as soon as I do that, you'll notice here that I'm presented with a small grid with some dotted lines as a background. And so it might be a little hard to see, but this is essentially going to be our data table. And so I can click within any of these 6 cells to actually enter my data. And so since I selected to use the first row of the table as a header, I'm actually going to type in my header value. So this will be my header 1. And then I can use the tab key to jump into the next cell. This will be my header 2. And then anything below the header rows will now be considered as values. And so this will be value number 1. And so now we've got our first row of headers, and then we've got our 4 values within the data table. Now, before we actually save this, we're going to want to transform this particular table that we've added. So by clicking in anywhere inside of the table, and then going to the styles drop down, you'll now notice that I have some additional object styles available. And so I can select the data table option, the table with border, and then I think there's also the table without a border option. For now, we're going to keep this as a data table, so I'm going to select that object style. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice here that the dotted bordering that was around this table has now disappeared. And so when it comes to creating a data table, we do recommend that by default you enter your information first before converting it to a data table. Otherwise, it does become very difficult to enter your data after the borders have been removed. So let's go ahead and actually save this now and see what it looks like. And we can now see our data table looks a lot different than it did when we were editing our basic page. And so starting from the very top, we have the show entries dropdown. And so right now, I only have 2 entries or 2 rows, but if I had more than 10 rows here, and I wanted to display more than 10 rows at a given time, I could do so by using this dropdown. One thing to keep in mind is that depending on how many entries are being shown, that will affect the number of pages that we can cycle through. And right now, because I only have 2 rows, those both can fit on the first page. And so the previous or next page buttons are disabled, but you do get a page count here, which lets me know how many pages are currently available. In addition to that, we also have a search feature or search box when we're using the data table object style. And so this particular search box allows me to search any of the rows within the data table. So for example, let's say I was interested in the row that contained value number 2. I could just simply type in value 2, and you'll notice here that that particular row has now been filtered out. Similarly, I can just type in value 4, and the other row has now been filtered out. One last thing to keep in mind when we're using the data table object style is that you can also sort the data table. And so on the right-hand side of the column header, we have this up arrow. Clicking on that here will actually change the sorting. So we can now see that value number 3 is the first row, and then clicking on that here switches that to now where value number 1 is the first row. So with that said, I believe that covers the data table object style. Let's actually change this into a regular table and see how that compares to the data table that we just created. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. And again, I can just click anywhere within the data table here. And then if I use the styles drop down, I can go ahead and use the table with a border. And as soon as I click on that, you'll notice here that it looks visually different as well from the data table in the WYSIWYG editor. I'm going to go ahead and save my page one more time. And you'll notice here that when we're not using the data table object style, we just have a static table with our headers highlighted in gray and then our 4 values. With this option, you do not get the show entries drop down, you do not get the sorting options, and you do not get the search function. So just wanted to point those differences out. Let's go back into edit mode, and we're going to quickly touch on icons, and then we'll see if we can quickly jump into the layout part of the demonstration. And so let's say I wanted to add an icon anywhere within the body of my basic page. Using the rich text format, we can do that. And we can do that by using it's going to be this flag option here, the Font Awesome button. And so if I click on that, I'm presented with an additional pop-up where I can navigate and see the list of available Font Awesome icons. But if I already know the name of my icon, I can just go ahead and search for that here using the autocomplete field. So let's say I want to add the edit icon. I can just type that in here. And again, you're presented with an autocomplete field of all the available Font Awesome icons. I'm going to click on the edit icon here. There are additional font settings here. I'm going to keep these as default. And I'll go ahead and just insert my icon. And you'll now notice here that in the WYSIWYG editor, I can now see my icon's been added to my page. And so fairly straightforward process of just how to add icons. There are, I think, 2 things that I did skip over, so I'd just like to quickly touch on those. A new feature that was recently introduced was the language feature. And so let me make sure here that I can set the language. So let's say I have some simple text. And let's say I wanted to associate that with the actual French language. I could highlight the content and I can use this set language dropdown. And then I can actually select the type of language that the selected text is written in. And so it might be hard for you guys to see here, but in parentheses, there's actually FR written here, just denoting that the selected bit of text here is French. This particular option here will not display when I actually save my page. So I do want to just quickly do that here and just show you guys here. So while I did select that this is French, that's not visible to end users. However, that will be available to text readers for those people that may be visually impaired. Okay, there's one other thing I wanted to discuss, and that was the warning and tag options. And so under the styles drop down, if I were to select a bit of text. There is a pre-formatted style for warning text. So I can click on that here. And you notice here that my text has now been updated to use the warning style. But in addition to that, there's also a tag style. So if I select my text and I scroll down here again, I can use the tag option. And those are now updated to use those particular styles. Keep in mind that these are pre-formatted, and so you cannot change them. However, those are available to you. And so with that said, I believe I've covered all of the text formatting options for simple text and rich format text. I know it's a lot of information. And so at this point, we'll take a quick break and just see if you guys have any questions. If not, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the 2-column layout. Okay, sounds like there's no questions. So let's quickly talk about how we can add a sidebar to our basic page. And so if you recall earlier, we discussed the related information box, which was a substitute that could be used for the sidebar. But if we don't want to use a related information box, we can scroll down, and below the custom content dropdown, there is a layout dropdown. Clicking on that here will present me with the option to use the 2-column layout or none. By default, your basic page will not have the 2-column layout enabled, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. Next, I'm presented with some additional options to decide on the style of the sidebar content. And so I can add just a simple text box, which is what's added by default. But then I can style the colors, or I can style how that particular text box is displayed. And so you'll notice here that under the style dropdown, we have highlight box, multi-purpose box, news box, and etc. One thing that we do want to highlight here is that we always want to select the styling based on the information that's going to be stored inside of the actual sidebar box, right? So just because the highlight box might be displayed in red does not mean that we should come in here and select the highlight box just because of the color. We should select the styling based off of the actual content that we're using it for. So for now, I'm going to select news box. I'm not going to add an image. And then if you'd like to, you can actually add a footer here. So I'm going to just quickly link out to my style guide. And then I can also add link text to be displayed within the sidebar box. I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And now we can see our page with our sidebar enabled. And so this looks, again, very similar to the related information box when we aligned it to the right, which is why we mentioned that it could be used as a substitute. However, if we did have a related info box in addition to the 2-column layout, that would be sandwiched right in between here. And so we recommend using one or the other. But at this point, I believe that kind of wraps up the demo. I know we are right up at meeting, and so I'm going to stop talking. I'll give Jess a minute to just kind of recap anything that I may have missed. But again, this meeting will be recorded, and all this information can be found in the CMS training web area.
Thanks, Fareed. Yeah, there's a lot to go over and a lot of things that we just didn't even have time to cover entirely. So I do encourage you to reference a lot of the links that I posted here in the chat. I'll end by putting them right here at the end as well. The CMS training site has all of the how-tos, right? How do you actually do all of the things that we talked about and all of the things we couldn't talk about, as well as a link to the intranet guide, which contains the standards that define, in some cases, how you use some of those things that we've talked about. But I'll pause now and see if folks have any questions that go beyond what we've talked about.
Jessica, I have a quick question.
Sure.
In the tables, is there any way to have the caption at the top rather than the bottom so that it looks like a title instead of a caption?
It does. You know, that is actually something that's on my list of to do. I'm not sure why by default the theme puts the caption at the top. Right now, that is where it goes, and that's not something that you as an editor can choose which one to use. So you've got two options. You can either not use the table caption and just enter free text wherever you want, above or below, or wait for us to be able to modify where that caption shows up.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, sounds like that's it. Again, thank you all for joining today's training session, and we hope to see you at the next one. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.